Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street and the small business lenders that help it grow. Joseph Coleman, good to see you, is in the house. And Chris, as always, thank you. Chris with Tuesdays, thank you very much. Chris, I know you're very busy, so I appreciate your time and your insights. Hey, we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about credit boxes. We got a question from Steve on that. And I think that's something we haven't talked about for a while, so that'll be a good topic. And first poll question is, when does the COVID underwriting criteria expire for new 7A loans? The notice came out December 2020. And does it expire this month, September 30th, December 31st, or there's no expiration date? And this is the one where SBA is demanding, giving guidance to lenders. I shouldn't use the word demand, giving guidance to lenders to address the COVID issue. Chris, you got a guess?
I would guess the end of the fiscal year, so September 30th, but I'm not sure. Seems like there's another question.
Technically, there's no expiration. Now, the form does expire December 1st. And at some point in time, my recommendation is when it's NA, just say we're not addressing it because this is not an issue in our footprint, period.
Right.
It's not affecting. It's going to go from maybe a 2-page analysis to a paragraph where it's not affecting my borrower supply chain. It's not affecting our footprint, and we're okay. So it needs to be addressed, but as it's not going to be as extensive as when we were in lockdowns and everything else. So, number 2, are you addressing the issues in that memo right now? Good. I'm glad, you need to address it. As I said, it doesn't have to be all that extensive, but it needs to be addressed. Chris, what we've found, and I'm sure you have the same experience, is SBA gets very upset. They don't get upset with your analysis or with what you say. They get upset when you ignore their guidance and the recommendation.
Yes, that's a nice way to put it.
Do you speak from experience, Mr. Hearn?
No, you should. If SBA puts out a procedural notice and they want some explanations, they want a lot more detail on this, then as a lender, you should definitely address it.
Yeah. And finally, what is the most important tool to handle, to calculate cash flow in 2021? Do we want the projections? Do we want last year's tax returns? Do we want last year's financial statements? Or do we really want to know what's going on with forgiveness and the status of that? The answer is all of the above, so no one's going to get criticized on that. Tax returns, but SBA is saying we're going to let the lenders rely on projections as long as you analyze why we think we're going to hit those numbers, and we all understand what happened in 2020. Chris, what are you doing in your shop?
Same thing. I mean, when someone gives us projections, we want to make sure we have very detailed assumptions and that we buy it, and we still end up discounting them somewhat. But we also, now that we're towards the end of June 21, we want to get 2020 tax returns if at all possible. And, we do take a look at forgiveness status and obviously plug that into the cash flow calculations as SBA wants us to do. But it's all these things. It's all those items. I'm glad that was the answer. That's what I would have guessed.
Yeah. And nothing wrong with in the projections. There's nothing wrong with basing a 7A or even 504 on projections. As Chris said, we want to have detailed assumptions, and the lender needs to sign off on it. I've told stories of the Inspector General has said, hey, there's a restaurant where they're doubling sales every year, and now they have a 30% net profit margin. Well, no restaurant in the United States or the world would ever hit that. Right. So they want you to analyze, they want you to underwrite the projections as well as the tax returns. Let's talk about credit boxes. Interesting question from Steve. I'll start it off, and my comments are, he asked me if there was a template, and Steve, my answer is no. And the reason why is that is something that should be unique to your institution. Now, it doesn't have to be. Now, we're talking about an addendum for SBA credit. We're talking 8 to 10 pages. We're not, maybe 5 to 10. We're not talking about a lot of pages. And it should be unique for your footprint and for what you're doing. I know there was a story of a banker who said the regulators came in and they asked for their SBA credit underwriting box and they gave it to him, but the person who prepared it had come from another bank and they had the old bank's name on it, which you would tend to lose some credibility on that.
A little bit.
I would start with addressing why a loan would go SBA and not conventional. That's what they want to see. And address those issues. So I would read off at the top is that it's under collateralized, it's because of maturity, and do that. Chris, as an aside, I talked to a couple lenders after the recession, and they were doing a postmortem on their loans that went bad, and they said the consistent trait was they deviated from their policy. I think it's okay to deviate from policy, but understand why you are and understand why you're deviating when you put it to pen and paper in the first place.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if you're going to have exceptions to your loan policy, you need to make sure you do extra due diligence for those exceptions, right, and you have extra authority levels for those exceptions.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
So my answer to you, Steve, is make it unique. Obviously, we want to talk about credit elsewhere, personal resource test. You want to answer the question for SBA and regulators. Why would you process a loan SBA and not conventionally? That's what they want to see. They also want to know that you're treating your SBA loans in servicing, liquidation, site visits, collection of financials, that you're treating those the same as you do your regular portfolio. And that's the message that you want to get across. So that's why I don't have a template for you on that. And I've talked to people who some have done it in a week and others make it a bank-wide situation and they produce this document in 6 months. I think there's probably a happy medium on that, Chris. what would you recommend to Steve?
Well, I think, if you've worked in the industry for a while, utilizing templates from where you've been in the past, obviously you want to update them. You don't want to be, like those lawyers that I read a contract every once in a while and I see their previous client that's listed in the document because they just keep recycling the same templates. It's never a good feeling. But, I think that's a good way to go off of it somewhat, using what you've seen in the past. But again, I agree with you, Bob. I think people have to update it for their institution, for their footprint, for how they want to go to market. If there's certain deals that they want to target over others, it may differ from where you were at previously. But I think you want to be as specific in terms of your guidelines as you can. But understand these are all guidelines. I don't believe that lenders should write these things as concrete rules, because there always will be some exceptions, and every single loan is a unique situation.
And there's nothing wrong with the exception, but I like what you said, Chris. Fine. For some reason, we're going to do an exception, but that means we need to explain why we're doing our exception policy and do much more due diligence. Right. I have no issue with that.
And I don't think SBA has either. They're perfectly fine. If you want to deviate from your loan policy, but you have some very good explanations for why you thought it had merit to be an exception, I think they'll be fine with that. But you've got to be able to defend that.
Yeah, and again, where it's upset is when you don't do it at all. I would definitely, for those of you who said 80%, I would definitely have a COVID amendment in your credit box, even at this date. Because I do know that even though, for example, California's opened up, but we have issues, supply chain issues and labor issues, and those are issues that should be addressed, and obviously you can always revisit it. How often do you update your credit policy, Chris?
We generally do it twice a year. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, and we've continued to have, we call it our COVID questionnaire that we require from the borrowers. We continue to do that. We continue to address it in our credit memos. I actually think it's a unique situation. It's kind of like with business plans. I don't really care that much what somebody comes up with on their business plan. What I care about is they have to go through the process of thinking much deeper about things for the business plan. And the same thing applies for a COVID questionnaire. I mean, I don't necessarily care what their answers are to some extent, but I want them to think about these things. What is different now versus during the pandemic? What have you done differently? How has that impacted your business? Just a variety of different things that unless you sort of force the business owner to do, a lot of them aren't going to necessarily do it and put it
You're
in.
not going to do it. Oh, I think that's great advice, Chris. One of the things that the regulators, I know SBA, the regulators, they want to see that, and they want to know how updated that is. But you can put guidelines. For example, you can say business acquisition by an employee in the company. Say, yeah, we'll go down to 5% cash. But someone who's coming in from the outside, we want to be, and you can give a range. You can go 20, 25%, 25, 30%. But if you say 25% and go 15%, I don't think, while you're doing it, I don't think they're bad at all. But if all of a sudden you go and give them the same terms that you would at 5%, I think you have some explaining to do.
Well, and I also think that not necessarily people that are on your daily webinar here, but I know that there's a lot of institutions out there that do have an SBA department that make SBA loans. And unfortunately, a lot of times they have the same policies for their loan policy for the bank applies to SBA loans. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's what SBA wants. A lot of lenders out there will turn deals down because it doesn't fit their loan policy. But what they haven't done, adopted, certain guidelines from SBA. And had they done that, and actually had they had an SBA loan policy, it'd probably be a quite different decision in most cases.
I've heard of one lender, they did a one-pager and they said, see attached SOP. And they attached 30 pages of SOP. I think they're looking for something a little bit more in-depth than that.
Yeah, no question.
There's nothing wrong with referencing the SOP, but I would go for if you're a regular listener, you know what the hot topics are. Life insurance, how you're going to address life insurance. Collateral coverage, you make it very clear in that. These loans do not have to be fully collateralized per SBA. They have to positive cash flow. In other words, the stuff that's second nature to all of us, there may be a regulator, or there is a regulator who can't even spell SBA, so they want to know what is this animal, what's going on with that. So I like your idea of every 6 months. And I would still do the COVID because there could be a surge. There could be, I know in California they've lifted restrictions, but the governor made it very clear that he can choose to impose it at his will whenever he chooses. So, I'm not throwing away the mask quite yet. Yeah. Joseph, you're not saying much. What's going on?
I'm letting you guys go ahead and talk about credit boxes, which I love. I have very little to talk about today, but what I did find is this PPP FOIA request information. I don't know if you guys have seen this. They've added all this public data for loans above 150, and then all these files are for the PPP data below 150. And I have included the data dictionary, but this is what the data looks like if you guys haven't pulled it up. It's all open to the public, and they list all the raw data. So
did they list loans under 150 now, Joseph? I know
yes.
That was a...
Yeah, so these are the big ones, public 150 plus. That's one big file, and then there are 13 files for up to 150. So, and then I included...
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I was trying to, which they do have that data. They've always had that for SBA 7A and 504 loans. And I just found this recently, so I'm trying to find the differences. But I think they list the company names and the addresses and a lot of information on every PPP loan. So that's just an interesting update.
And Joseph, can you give us the URL, or where is that in SBA's website?
Sure. Yeah, it's listed right here, data.sba.gov/dataset/PPP-FOIA. If you just do a Google search for PPP loan data, you can navigate to this, and then this is being updated by SBA. So that's what I found.
Does it show the 7A data, which is separate, obviously? They show charge-off information. Does this show any? Well, we don't have any charge-off information. Do they have a column for that? Do they?
Let's see. Let me pull up the dictionary, and maybe you guys can read this. So they have these are all the fields that are included: the loan number, borrower name, and these are the servicing lender information, which is interesting.
Okay, it does say or charged off. It says go back up.
Loan status update.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have a column from charge off yet because we don't know how to charge off a loan yet. So
Correct,
it will include that data. Okay.
When did this stuff come out, Joseph?
I just found this today, so I don't know when they update it. They usually like to update it, not really tell us, but I was just doing a search for this information for the updated forgiveness data, which hasn't been updated since May 24th. So we've covered this. This is the big 521 billion in volume, and the 279 have been forgiven. So I was kind of digging around that stuff, and then I found all this FOIA stuff, which looks new to me. So you can go ahead and we're gonna take a look at this carefully, obviously, and go through it.
That's interesting. Good job, Joseph. Hey, Chris, what is? Yes, you don't have to answer this. If I ever ask a question you don't want to answer, you can choose to take the fifth.
Okay.
In
A setup.
written, they go, no comment. That is
Right.
All
right.
No comment.
Fire away. What do you want to know?
What is SBA telling you on getting these first draw loans forgiven? Are they giving you guidance? Are they giving you a hassle? Are they saying anything other than, I know you're being a good citizen and trying to clean up the books as much as possible?
Yeah, I think there's a fair amount of pressure on SBA to wrap a lot of this up.
There you go.
They're applying some of that to lenders. There's been a few calls over the last few weeks with lenders that were sort of behind on forgiveness, and some of them
Define behind.
Maybe they only had 15, 20, 25% of their portfolio had been forgiven from 2020. So there's been some pressure applied to try and hustle folks along a little bit.
What is the motivation of this? First of all, who's giving the pressure, and why do we care that something's forgiven now, or we wait 6 months?
Well, I mean, I think SBA is definitely applying a little bit of pressure. They want to be done with this, and they want the lending community to be done with this so they can focus back on regular SBA loans. The SBA seems to be very understanding of the fact that there are some very apathetic borrowers out there. There's been, I can tell you for one, our 2020 portfolio, we've the people that have been non-responsive, and we have them in various stages, so we know exactly who they are. It's probably about 20% of our portfolio that have not started the forgiveness application. And we've sent out 8 emails in the last 6 weeks, and now we're actually beginning to make outbound calls to them to encourage it. So SBA is aware of things like this. I think you're going to probably see an uptick in marketing outreach from SBA to these borrowers in the coming weeks and months ahead.
Oh, really? SBA?
Yeah, I think that's going to occur. I also know that SBA has got a variety of things that they're working on to try and expedite some of the forgiveness, particularly for the 2021 loans. So don't be surprised if the 3508 form gets changed again sometime next month. I mean, there's some things that are in the works that are trying to
give us
get these things behind us.
What if there's changes in the 3508? What would the changes? It's okay. Now, normally I don't like to speculate, but here I'll speculate. If they change the form, what will the changes look like? How's that sound?
And I don't know, Bob. I mean, I've made some recommendations to them. I mean, there's different verbiage that it can be kind of confusing to borrowers. I don't know if they're going to clean up some of that stuff, but I will tell you, like I did a week or two ago, I think there's going to be some upcoming changes. I think it's going to be generally positive for the lending community, and it'll be generally positive for the borrowers as well. And the bottom line is, I think SBA wants to get this behind them. They want to get back to regular business, just like most.
I appreciate you giving us that benchmark. So if you've only done 20-25% of forgiveness of your portfolio, that's a benchmark. So
you probably have already heard from SBA if that's the case.
Hey, be sure to join us tomorrow. We're going to do a cash flow webinar incorporating some of the stuff we talked about, specifically basing it on how to base it on projections, how to underwrite the projections and how to calculate the cash flow specifically for your SBA loans. And this is one significant difference that you will have other than your general underwriting. But we're going to be focusing on that still. And as the world continues to evolve and change, we're still under the COVID requirements. But as I said, we can shorten some of that up. Chris, I know you're very busy. Thank you so much. Appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
It's good to see you. What are you wearing there? No suit and
Oh.
tie?
No, this is a Florida shirt. We're going to, me and my wife are going to Florida Friday. So,
Yeah.
All right.
By the way, with that FOIA stuff you found, I'm pretty sure that means we're about a week to 10 days away from new salacious stories in the media about people, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know when this hit, guys, so don't quote me, but it is new. It is new. I haven't seen it yet. So.
Okay, well, that's my cue, Joseph. We need to tear that apart. So we'll.
Okay.
Hey, thank
But
you all
I'll
for
be
joining today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street. An entrepreneur at a time. Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Take care.